Well, it's been 5 or 6 months since I built this slot mortiser and posted it. I've had a good chance to figure out what I like and don't like about it. And I've had a lot of requests for plans, so I went ahead and made plans and posted them on shopbuilt.org. And I've also taken the time to build a new one with a few improvements. And I'll be posting some build videos on how to build this thing. So I hope you guys like it. Alright, to get started, I cut out all the piece of plywood that I would need, and I was able to just get all those right off the cut list from the plan. And the first thing we'll build is the fence supports. So there's going to be a left and a right coming out of this, but what I'm going to do is cut the dado across the whole thing first, and then I'll rip it down the center for two sides. Alright, so I got my groove cut here for my fence supports, and while I have the dado stack still in the table saw, I'm going to do the same thing for the table supports. So I'll run dado through the width, and then I'll be able to cut it down the center to get my left and my right. Alright, now that I got the dado slots all cut out and fitted for the blocks, I can go ahead and rip out my left and right portions. So a left and a right for the fence supports and a left and a right for the table supports. I'll then go ahead and cut the rest of the shape out for the fence supports, and I'll cut the tapers off for the table support. Okay, now I got my two fence supports screwed together in like the waist portion of it. You can see the shape of it there. There has to be a 1/4 inch slot milled right through here. So while it's still all square, I'm going to do that now on the router table. So I did poke 2 holes through with a drill first just to make life a little easier. Alright, with these fence supports and table supports, it's absolutely crucial that the dado runs perfectly parallel to the fence on these ones and perfectly perpendicular to where the table will be on these ones, because the whole purpose of these is to help keep the table run up and down square to the fence. Alright, so now that we got the dados cut and we know that the table will be able to slide up and down perfectly perpendicular to the fence, the other thing we got to look at is the taper in the table support. So I already laid out the taper, and there's 2 waist areas, one here and one here. I'm going to screw these 2 pieces together there so that I can cut this at the same time to ensure that they'll be perfectly identical. And the offcut will be the wedge which pushes the table up and down. So I'll go ahead and do that table saw. Alright, so this table support is a little bit tricky, but I think it's pretty important to follow the order to keep it as accurate as possible. So the first thing you want to do is cut the dado, and then after you cut the dado, you can go ahead and rip your 2 halves. And then you can screw your 2 halves together in the waist area, which is right here and right here. Once you got them screwed together, then you can cut your tapers. So that will be cutting these guys off. Then you can go ahead and cut these back tapers off, which means you still have 1 screw holding it. Then rip your 3-inch widths, cut those guys off, and then lastly you can cut the ends off, and you're left with your supports, which is going to go like this. And the offcuts, the tapers, is what's going to be used as your wedges. Alright, so I've taken the time to cut out my fence and screw it to my fence supports, and I have it sitting on the base here, sitting perfectly center. And what I did was I cut out my risers for my drawer slides, which sit right in here. And what I'm thinking I'll do is I'll screw these to the base first, and then I'll be able to clamp my fence support to this and screw the fence support up through the bottom. Alright, so the offcut from the table supports what's going to be used for the wedge, what's going to drive that table upwards. Now what I've gone ahead and did is run a dado along the length of it, and that's going to mate with this guide piece, which is just a rabbet. And see, that will slide in there like that, and as you can see, it's nice and flush right through here. And it'll sit there like this, and it's going to run in between this guide and the fence support. Like so. Now, the table support, I already cut the key out and fits nice and tight on this side, and it's going to slide along here like so, and that's what's going to keep this table square to the fence. Alright, as you can see, I got my guides all screwed on now. And what I did is I took my wedges and slid them all the way back. I cut my stretcher here to length, and I put it in there, and I'm squeezing it tight with the clamp right up against the fence so I know everything's perfectly aligned. And I can get one screw in here, and same thing on the other side. I'll be able to take the clamp off and get the other screw in. Alright, I just realized I had these supports for the drawer slides. I had them flush to the back, and they're actually supposed to be up 2 inches. And the reason why that's important is because actually in the bottom of them there's a little dado slot. What that's for, you see on this side a rod goes through there, and that's what's going to support one end of your spring. And what these springs are used for here is to return the table back down. So there's another rod that goes through here like so. These springs will hook here, and when the table goes up it'll put tension on the springs, and when it's returned back down, it's what's going to return it back down. So next we're going to put this back support in here, and this is actually kind of critical too, because we want this to ride fairly tight up against this fence, and that's going to help things stay nice and square and tight too. So to do that, I'm going to place my drawer slides in for now. So, and also slide my top in. Just give this back support a little bit of a clearance. I'm just going to put a piece of paper in between there, and now I'll go ahead and put a clamp on this. Alright, so now you can see I got everything sitting perfectly square to the fence. That's the most crucial part. And with everything clamped nice and tight and a piece of paper for a shim for the top and the bottom, I'll go ahead and put a couple screws through the side. Alright, so I went ahead and screwed my top plate here onto the drawer slides. And what you can notice is a notch cut out right here, and what that's for is a spring on this side. I did have 2 springs in this originally, but with the springs that I bought, it was just too much tension, and one seems to work perfect. So it just depends on what spring you buy, whether you'll need 1 or 2. But the idea behind this notch, opposed to just cutting this board short, is so that you get a nice tight seam here, keeping dust on this side and not on this side where the drawer slides are. Alright, so all what's left on the table side is to actually put the table in and drill a couple holes here, what will lock your guides into place, and that will pretty well wrap up the table side and table height adjustment end of it.